Chapter 10. Between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls Acorn's shadow. Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls Acorn's shadow. Between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls Acorn's shadow. For thine is the kingdom, for thine is, life is, for thine is the... This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. The chapter ends. Well, shit. Whatever, I'm sure it's fine, Acorn said. He raised one hoof over the book, casting a shadow over it. There, now this chapter's title is already out of the way, so we don't need to worry about it. Acorn's shadow, check. So, what's the deal? John Betancourt asked Acorn. What and how are we judging? Well, Acorn replied, we have two choices, one more extreme and one less. Like I mentioned before, Anna's working on a plan to return this book to normal. We can either help her plan or make it unnecessary. What is this plan of Anna's? Minos said. He swished his tail and was happy to notice that he didn't start shitting. Apparently the absence of Dirk's influence was already starting to make life a bit more bearable. Acorn whinnied and scuffed the ground with his hoof. I don't know. To be honest, I was kind of hoping she would describe Operation Palimpsest before the book cut back to us so we could read it. Jean Betancourt picked the paper back up and flipped to the relevant page. She could tell that it was the relevant page because it ended with the words, flip to the relevant page. Maybe the narrative will shift back over to their perspective soon, Jean said hopefully. Yes, Minos said, and maybe that'll happen right now. He looked at Betancourt. She shook her head. Minos grumbled. Oh well, Acorn said with an equine shrug, which means he just stood still because ponies can't fucking shrug. Guess we're flying blind, unless the narrative shifts back right. So here's my plan, Anna said. Somewhere far away, a black cat shouted, "Oh, come on!" Anna stood on the stump at the edge of the clearing and looked at her two friends like a seasoned general surveying her troops. But in this metaphor, Pam and Pawnee weren't soldiers. No, they were more akin to fighter jets. Vicious, deadly, complex machines made of thousands of delicate parts working precariously in tandem, filled with rocket fuel and carrying explosive payloads as dangerous to their targets as they were to themselves, ripping through the skies at ridiculous speeds, faster than sound, faster than missiles, faster than any thought or intent beyond mere reflex, full of mazes and crackling electronic wiring and laden with complex meters and dials right next to their controls so that the slightest change in altitude or bearing is registered in a microsecond-long feedback loop, data flickering through them faster than they themselves fly, covered in radar-absorbent paint, heat-ablating tiles covering their exhaust troughs, equipped with dual afterburning Pratt & Whitney F109 PW100 turbofan engines that incorporate pitch-axis thrust-vectoring nozzles with a range of plus-minus 20 degrees, each with a max thrust to the 35,000 lbf 156 kN class. That's what Pam and Pawnee were like in that moment. Hey Pawnee, Pam whispered. Or should I call you Lulu now? Anyway, you doing okay after your ego disintegration and resultant existential crisis? Pawnee shrugged. Nah, Pawnee's good, and I'm more or less fine. I've decided to just not think about it too much. Really, is it that much more shock than all the other shit we've been dealing with today? Yeah, Pam said. If you can accept that you're a fictional character, any other personal revelations must be pretty tame by comparison. She smiled and gave Pawnee a quick hug. Regardless, I'm glad you made it through. Such as the Novigrad Codex or the Codex Skullformitanis B, Anna said, unaware that her friends/troop/fighter jets weren't listening to her fascinating lecture on the history of palimpsests. Luckily, they tuned in just in time to hear her say, but the underlying text isn't lost forever. It leaves a mark, a trace, because, after all, what is a palimpsest? It is simply a document from which the original writing has been scraped off so that the parchment or vellum can be reused. And that's why Operation Palimpsest is such a clever name for what we're going to do. We'll restore the original document, the trace, by repeating the very process that destroyed it. We're going to scrape off Dirk's text to re-reveal the text underneath it. It's been obscured, but by scraping off the top layer, it will be obscured. represent the representation. Pam and Pawnee nodded along, pretending for Anna's sake that re-reveal was a phrase that made any sort of sense. The ultimate mechanism is a literal as well as a metaphorical flattening, Anna continued. Literally in that we want to get rid of those pasted on pages that are making this book 3 times thicker than it should be, but more importantly, figuratively. Until now, the center of the structure of this text was outside the structure itself, which is both impossible and, since it's a text, necessary. The opposition between inside and outside is the opposition by which all our other oppositions are posed, but writing posits a deposition of this very positional opposition. Writing is external to itself, while also being nothing except the self. It can't be outside the structure because it is the structure, but how can something be described if it's not from the outside? And with this opposition destabilized, the writing, the signifier, representation, is both something and nothing in and of itself. It's death. Or is it just a representation of death? A performance of death? Life playing at, on, with, and as death. But that's how it should be. The problem with this text, Dirk's text, isn't that it's exterior to itself. All texts are. The problem is that it's explicitly exterior, and by so clearly identifying an exterior, the center shifts. This text is defined by its opposition and the text that surrounds it from which it draws, so the center retreats, withdraws, becomes centralized. Now the center of the structure is inside the structure, which is both exactly where it should be and where it cannot afford to be. The chain of signification is revealed by and to the author, and this revelation transforms it into shackles. To save this text, to return it to what it should be, we'll therefore need to repeat the original process that writes writing. It's an expulsion, a purification, but inverted, the opposite of the scapegoat, which, in being cast out from the group, divides the group by opposition to it, which is what Dirk's text did. What we need to do is to expel the parasite of writing, which is death, from writing in order to define our life. This will return writing and this text to what makes it, writing, essential, valuable, necessary. But this therapeutic, cathartic elimination must call upon the very thing that it's expelling, which means that the operation must exclude itself from itself. We'll write out writing and erase erasure. Thus, our flattening will be an ironic one in the proper sense of the word. We are, number 1, scraping off Dirk's writing, which, number 2, literally flattens our text. This, in turn, number 3, reopens it to the possibility of exteriorities such as, number 4, freeing the center from the structure and unflattening it. Did you get all of that, girls? Yes, Pam and Pawnee said in unison. Good, and here's how we do it. More dyslexia shenanigans. Pam, you will guide us to the point where the flattening must occur. In fact, you've already been guiding us there. That's how you knew so much, so many things that you shouldn't have known. It's because, Pam, you are our map. Lead us. Pam shrugged. Sure, okay, kinda lame, but whatevs. And Pawnee, Anne continued, you're the key to all of this. You are the one who holds the future of 2 realities in her hands. Pawnee, Indiana. Lulu Sanders. One of being of this world, one of the world that should have been. Your very identity straddles the 2 texts. You can fix all this, Pawnee. You will give the world a fresh start by scraping it clean, flattening it, and becoming the Eve of that new old world, its progenitor. But instead of eating the fruit, you must refuse it. You must regain your innocence, all of our innocence. You, Pawnee Sanders, are the new ape who re-sands the world. Re-sands? Pawnee asked, like using sandpaper? A bit of a stretch. Look, said Anna, I did the best I could with what I had. Like I said, palimpsest comes from Greek palin and psau, I scrape. Scrape again, re-sand, it's good enough. Okay, fine, Pawnee said. Let's see if I can figure out the next one. Anna Harley, your name anagrams to, hen a la yarn? Because you knit us together and you make a nest? No, I'm done with the dyslexia thing. I didn't do one for my own name. Oh, Pawnee sulked, feeling a bit put off. It's okay, Pawnee, Pam whispered. I was going to say they were anagrams. Your thing was smarter than mine. Pawnee smiled, knowing this to be true. Anagrams. Jesus. Well, Pam, Anna said, hopping off the stump. Ready to head out? You know how to get there, right? Pam nodded. Yes, I do, but I don't know where there is. Simple, Anna said as she picked up her fallen mechanical arm from the snow, looked it over, and tossed it aside. We're going to the end of the book.